Single dad CEO exposed an incredible truth when his daughter said, "But Daddy, she's so nice." The laughter in the kitchen swirled like steam rising from his daughter Lily's plate of steaming mashed potatoes and chicken nuggets. David watched her small hands grip the fork with enthusiasm, her eyes lit with joy. It should have been a moment of peace, just a father and daughter sharing a meal, but then, with unwavering sincerity, Lily looked up, her voice piercing through the warmth of the moment. "But Daddy, she's so nice." Her innocent observation struck him hard, sending tremors through his heart. How could she be so trusting? The she in question was Isabel, a new business partner whose charm felt magnetic but now left David in turmoil. Could this charming facade be hiding ulterior motives? His mind raced back through meetings that felt more like an intricate dance of manipulation than collaboration. Was he being naive? David prided himself on teaching Lily the importance of kindness and trust, but the stakes were higher now. The weight of her words coiled tightly around him, suffocating the joy of their simple dinner. He had devoted his life to creating a better future for them both, yet in the world of tech where betrayal lurked in the shadows, he felt like a fool. As he cleared the table, David thought about the advice his father had imparted, that integrity eclipsed profit in the grand theater of business. Yet in the relentless flicker of glowing screens and mounting pressure, those words felt like whispers lost in the winds of ambition. He stood at an intersection. Could he continue to nurture Lily's innocent view of the world while listening to his gut about Isabel's cruel potential? The internal conflict swelled like a storm cloud overhead. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The tension grew within the office like vines of doubt. Whispers among employees echoed in David's ears, unnecessary speculation that turned their once cohesive work environment into a minefield of suspicion. As he worked late nights, the illumination of computer screens gradually morphed into reminders of his vulnerability. Discovering financial discrepancies in their latest project felt like stepping onto quicksand. His heart sank. Was he putting his daughter's future, everything he had built, at risk for blind optimism? Revelations came to him like slow-motion scenes in a movie. The pain of potentially betraying Lily's trust intertwined with the burning desire to keep her safe. Her voice rang in his mind. "But can't you just talk to her?" The innocence behind the question tormented him. Could communication mend the widening gulf, or was he simply dangling at the edge of peril? As uncertainty settled in, he turned to an old family journal tucked away in the attic. It ignited a fire in him, revealing a legacy of resilience intertwined with entrepreneurial spirit. Now, as he prepared for a confrontation that would unravel the fabric of his relationships, the stakes felt shapeless yet critical. David closed his eyes against the weight of it all, the dichotomy of protecting Lily's innocence and confronting the grim realities of the corporate world. Each breath magnified his turmoil. He was caught in an intricate web. The looming decisions before him carved a shadow over their lives, and the inevitability sank deep. Could he uproot the trust Lily had in Isabel, the seemingly sweet figure she saw as a friend? The darkness beckoned, and David felt the cold fingers of doubt clutching at his resolve. In that kitchen, amidst a dinner of comfort, the essence of their lives hung in a delicate balance, waiting for the storm to break. David stared at the blank screen of his laptop, the blinking cursor a haunting reminder of the silence that had crept into his life. He had avoided confronting Isabel, choosing instead to immerse himself in work, as if burying himself in spreadsheets and projections could somehow shield him from the inevitable storm brewing on the horizon. Yet, Lily's innocent words reverberated in his mind, each repetition tugging at his conscience. Every morning, he awoke to the specter of uncertainty. The day's tasks piled up, each meeting with Isabel feeling more like a stage rehearsal for a play where the script had gone awry. Her reassuring smile now felt like a mask, concealing truths he feared to unearth. After all, a simple conversation with her could either dispel his doubts or entangle him deeper in treachery. Perhaps Lily was right. He had to talk to her, but what would he even say? As he navigated the complexities of the business landscape, David found a flicker of clarity when he glided through the worn pages of his father's journal. The stories of resilience and integrity embedded in those lines reminded him of the values he had adopted as a boy, the same values he wanted to impart to Lily. He pondered how hollow success felt when it was built on shaky foundations, a lesson he couldn't ignore in light of the financial discrepancies that flickered ominously in his mind. His decision crystallized. He would approach Isabel, but not as a desperate partner seeking reassurance, rather as a principled leader expecting transparency. A confrontation where uncovering the truth could either amplify his fears or fortify his resolve. In the days that followed, David eschewed distractions and focused on the upcoming dialogue, preparing carefully, weighing his words like precious cargo. Each moment he spent rehearsing his approach felt like sharpening a weapon for battle, the stakes high and the implications daunting. Despite the bruising vulnerability of exposing his doubts, he felt a burgeoning determination to protect Lily's simple view of goodness in the world. Still, he couldn't shake the unsettling sensation that Isabel was already several steps ahead in their professional chess game. Every smile in the office, every team lunch filled with laughter felt fraught with deceit. Would he be the pawn in her strategy? Her presence loomed, an omnipresent force mingling with his daily grind, making each interaction slip between cordial and chilling. The day of the meeting arrived with the weight of a thunderous silence. David paced in his office beforehand, his pulse racing as he recalled her undeniable charm. What array of tactics would she unveil? Would she deny knowledge of the discrepancies, or would she turn the tables with practiced ease? He needed to remain calm, to listen, but the fear of betrayal fueled a fire inside him. Lily's face swam back into view, her wide, trusting eyes illuminating the path ahead. As he stepped into the conference room, David resolved that this wasn't just about business. It was about preserving the essence of trust for his daughter, a bulwark against a world often illuminated by greed. Isabel, he started, his voice steady, yet tense, we need to talk. Was this the moment the facade would crack? Would he uncover a layer of deception that would send shockwaves through his professional life? With the weight of his daughter's expectations pressing upon him, he took a deep breath, ready to confront the truth head-on, unsure of what awaited him on the battlefield of their interaction. The air crackled with tension, both apprehensive yet charged with possibility, as David braced himself to uncover if his worst fears were true or if they would simply dissipate like a morning mist. Would he emerge as a protector, or would he find himself ensnared in a web of deception? David stood at the threshold of confrontation, acutely aware that this moment had been years in the making. He repeated his mantra silently, feeling the weight of every word. Stay calm, stay focused. The table loomed large, a chasm between him and Isabel, whose confident demeanor could easily divert the conversation from its essential truths. Isabel, he began again, more resolute, the financial projections you submitted last week don't add up. I need clarity for the sake of our department and for trust within the team. The words slipped from his mouth like stones, each one a declaration of intent rather than mere inquiry. Her smile flickered for a moment, eyes narrowing in response. David, I assure you, everything is in order. Some fluctuations are expected, we're navigating an unpredictable market. There was a practiced ease to her tone, as though she had rehearsed this response. That he leaned forward, taking the risk of vulnerability. But Isabel, this isn't just about numbers. It's about our integrity. It's about what we represent to our clients, to the people working under us. His voice held an edge, fueled by unnerving insights. Isabel crossed her arms, a defensive posture that sent a ripple of alarm through David. He sensed the power play, she was boxing him into a corner. You're worrying too much, David. I expected you to be more of a visionary. Visionary. With the word, a spark of irritation flared within him. Vision was the grasp of distant ambition, yet here he was, grappling for the very ground beneath his feet. This is not about vision. It's about following the principles we agreed upon, about leadership that values truth over pleasing facades. A shadow crossed her face, an uncharacteristic glimpse of uncertainty. David seized the moment. Tell me, what's really going on? Are you hiding something? The question hung in the air, sizzling with anticipation. For a heartbeat, Isabel's mask wavered. He caught a flicker in her eyes, a tiny slip that might have been fear or anger. It was hard to discern. Yet, in that instant, David felt a surge of confidence. He was no longer just a passive participant in this game. He was the one probing for truth. "There's nothing to hide," she finally replied, her voice a carefully constructed fortress. The statement sounded hollow, and the realization struck him that perhaps she had been playing him all along, yet behind the confrontation, another form of clarity emerged. This wasn't solely about Isabel or their corporate future, it illuminated a larger pathway for David. Resolving to build real integrity and transparency within himself became not just a necessity but a profound responsibility, especially as a father. As the tension bounced back and forth like a taut wire, he realized he needed to take the conversation a step further. "We have to share responsibility as leaders. If I can't trust you, how can we foster trust among our team?" His words aimed not just at Isabel but at the entire dynamic of their working relationship. Isabel's expression hardened, but David could see the underlying crack he had reached her. "You're getting too personal," she admonished, yet he sensed a hint of defensiveness. "Then let us make it professional," he countered. "Let us reset the parameters of our partnership." He felt invigorated, emboldened by this unexpected shift. It was then that he grasped the essence of his journey. The struggle against deception in the corporate world mirrored his desire to shape a better reality for Lily. He needed to embody the trustworthiness he wished to see in others. As their dialogue ebbed, David felt an unsettling adrenaline rush. He was exiting this common ritual of blame-placing and blaming. The realization left him buzzing with determination, yet the thrill was laced with dread. Isabel was poised to retaliate. He swallowed hard, aware that the undercurrents of their meeting could very well ripple into a deeper conflict. "Isabel, if we can turn this around, I think we can lead our team into a new era of transparency. But I want to do it alone." The silence stretched. Unnaturally, a standoff entwined with potential repercussions. What would Isabel's next move be? Would she drag him down into chaos to protect herself, or might she find the courage to align for a greater good? In that suspended moment, everything hung in the balance. David understood that the real fight lay ahead, far beyond this conversation, with both professional and personal stakes raised higher than ever before. The flicker of hope emerged as a beacon. Perhaps a new chapter was beginning, and it all hinged on this fragile negotiation. Yet as he left the meeting, a disquieting thought crept in. What revelations might Isabel not be ready to share? How deep did the deception run? David knew that navigating this truth would demand every ounce of his newly kindled resolve. The cold, fluorescent lights of the office felt harsh against David's skin as he stepped into the hallway, the weight of his confrontation with Isabel still thick in the air. His mind raced, balancing the anticipation of conflict with the dawning realization that he had crossed an invisible line from compliance to engagement. Each step echoed with his renewed determination. Here he was, no longer the passive observer but a man owning his voice, yet questions burrowed deep into his mind. How much longer could he navigate the murky waters of corporate politics? Isabel had hinted at more beneath the surface, and the notion hung uneasily in the back of his thoughts. Was this the tip of the iceberg, or a mere distraction from deeper issues awaiting him? As he reached his office, David found his hands shaking slightly, adrenaline still surging from the encounter. He shut the door, momentarily savoring the solitude it provided. He needed to think, to plot his next steps. He sank into his chair, the veneer of authority beginning to feel heavy. Despite his newfound resolve, doubt clawed at his confidence. He opened his drawer and retrieved a worn-out notepad. "I need to prepare," he muttered, jotting down his observations from the meeting. As he wrote, the act became both cathartic and necessary. Each line was a brick in the foundation of his professional integrity. He noted Isabel's defensive stance, the flickers of uncertainty in her expression, and her veiled threats underscoring their fragile partnership. Writing it down was like wresting back control over his own narrative. Amidst the barrage of thoughts, one image returned to him, a mental snapshot of Lily, her wide-eyed innocence contrasting against the turbulent world David was now grappling with. He had to embody the trust and integrity he desired for her growing sense of the world. The urgency surged within him. He had to succeed not just for himself but for her. Focusing, David drafted a strategy on how to approach things differently moving forward. He needed allies. However, trust was a delicate commodity in their office. Building alliances hinged on his ability to demonstrate his commitment to transparency not just with Isabel but within the entire team. A newfound sense of leadership was blossoming. The responsibility weighed on him like a mantle he was reluctantly learning to wear. Yet the deeper challenge lay in the unpredictability of individuals like Isabel. How could he forge a path toward openness when others might still prefer the shadows? His instincts warned him against naivete. David had watched others around him fall victim to similar machinations, their integrity traded for fleeting advantages. He would do well to remember this lesson as he explored his next moves. Suddenly, the shrill sound of his phone jolted him back. It was Lily's school. The enthusiasm in the voice on the other end was at odds with the tense atmosphere surrounding him. "Mr. Grayson? We need to discuss something important regarding Lily." A chill gripped David as his thoughts spiraled once more. Was this a consequence of his corporate battles seeping into his family life? The excitement of confrontation with Isabel faded, replaced with raw anxiety about what implications this call could have on his daughter's well-being. David's resolve solidified, knowing that his personal life and professional challenges were becoming intertwined. Faced with yet another vulnerability, he realized he couldn't isolate these struggles. If he wanted to be the leader he aspired to be, he had to find balance and clarity amid chaos. As he made arrangements to meet with the school, the implications grew heavier. The complexities of trust, fear, and responsibility were now encroaching, hinting at storms brewing on multiple fronts. How would he navigate this tangled web, both at work and home? David felt the flickers of self-doubt reignite. The stakes were rising, and he was not done unraveling the threads of deception hiding in plain sight. With each new challenge came a daunting question: what truth awaited him just around the corner? David took a deep breath, pushing aside the insistent anxiety. He needed clarity before facing Lily's teachers. As he stepped out of his office, the iron grip of his previous confrontation lingered. The memory of Isabel's stony composure still gnawed at him, challenging his own self-perception. Could he maintain his newfound assertiveness in a different arena, one that mattered even more? The short walk to the school felt like traversing a tightrope. The weight of expectations, his own and others, pressed hard against his chest. Each step reminded him that he was no longer merely a corporate cog but a father striving to model integrity and strength for his daughter. As David approached the school building, he noticed the cheerful decorations adorning the walls, a stark contrast to the turmoil swirling in his mind. Bright colors and the sound of children's laughter echoed, yet he felt uncharacteristically detached as he entered the reception area. His heart drummed an unsettled rhythm, a mix of concern for Lily and the residual adrenaline from his earlier conflict. "Mr. Grayson?" A soft voice interrupted his thoughts. He turned to see an older woman wearing reading glasses perched precariously on her nose. "I'm Mrs. Thompson, Lily's teacher. Thank you for coming on such short notice." "Of course," he replied, struggling to keep his voice steady. As they settled into the small conference room, the atmosphere thickened with an unspoken tension. David watched Mrs. Thompson closely, searching for signs of distress that might indicate trouble with Lily. "Lily has been doing well academically," she began, her voice soothing, "but we've noticed some changes in her behavior recently." David's heart plummeted. This was not the news he had hoped for. "She seems withdrawn and has had some trouble concentrating. We're concerned she might be worried about something outside of school." Fear stirred within him, intertwining with memories of late nights spent drafting the next business proposal, when he felt even the smallest moments with Lily slipping through his fingers. The notion of his corporate battles invading his home life loomed larger than ever. What had he overlooked in his pursuit of professional success? "Is she opening up to you?" he pressed, desperation creeping into his tone. Thoughts of Isabel's defiance echoed in his mind, casting shadows of uncertainty over his parenting. "She's been hesitant to talk, but I believe she feels safe here," Mrs. Thompson reassured him. "It might help to create a more supportive environment at home. Ask open-ended questions without pressure. Let her lead the conversation." David left the school feeling a heavy mix of emotions. The weight of responsibility for Lily's emotional well-being rested squarely on his shoulders. He couldn't treat this as he might a business dilemma, where strategies could be crafted and figures could be reconciled. This was raw vulnerability, and it shook him. Determined to find a balance, David arrived home with a clear intent. Lily deserved a father who could face conflicts in both the boardroom and the living room. Sitting on the couch, he waited for her to return, his mind racing with the strategies he'd need not just for his job, but to reconnect with his daughter. When Lily burst through the door, her innocence wrapped around her like a shield against the fractures in his world. Seeing her bright smile, he felt a surge of warmth cutting through his internal chaos. "Hey, kiddo," he said, forcing a smile. "How was school today?" Lily's eyes sparkled momentarily before she turned serious. "Daddy, do you think it's okay to trust people who seem nice?" The question sliced through his defenses. David felt the familiar cold grip of tension creep back in. Could she sense the underlying current of his own mistrust? "Sometimes, sweetness can hide a lot," he replied cautiously, his own memories of Isabel echoing. "But it's important to be open, too." As he watched Lily ponder his response, David felt a knot of determination tighten in his chest. He needed to have delicate yet truthful conversations with her, laying the groundwork for trust and honesty. The path ahead was a winding road full of uncertainties, mirroring the murky underground battles of his workplace, but as he sank deeper into this looming interplay between work, family, and the chaos of trust, one thing became clear: he couldn't shield Lily from the realities of the world he'd started to uncover. What truth was worth facing both in his work and his daughter's life? What if the dangers weren't just lurking in the office, but also in the people he deemed safe? With each thought swelling inside him, David braced himself for the conversation he needed to have, knowing that navigating his dual roles was about to redefine both his parenthood and his career. Would he be brave enough to confront the shadows and find what lay hidden beneath the surface? David inhaled sharply, the air in the living room heavy with unspoken words. The looming shadows of his responsibilities pressed in on him as he observed Lily's thoughtful gaze. It was uncomfortable, this mixture of innocence and awareness, and he could sense that she was tiptoeing around something deeper, a reality that needed careful unraveling. "Trust," he echoed, considering Lily's question. "It's complex, isn't it? People can project kindness, but motivations often run deeper." He hesitated, sensing Lily's slight shift in posture. The seal had been broken. He needed to navigate this conversation skillfully. "What do you mean?" Lily asked, her youthful curiosity shining through. He swallowed hard, feeling the weight of his decision. "Sometimes, what appears nice might not be, and sometimes it's those who seem distant or stern who have the most noble intentions." He glanced into her wide, questioning eyes and felt the urgency to protect her from disillusionment while fostering her ability to discern the world around her. "Like Mrs. Thompson?" Lily replied, her brow furrowed. "She's nice, but do you think she's hiding something?" David felt the familiar pang of apprehension mixed with admiration at her perceptiveness. "That's the thing. It's not about labeling people as good or bad. It's about understanding them, and trusting your feelings about them." As they spoke, he realized that this was not just an exposition of trust but also an invitation to connect. This moment was an opportunity for both vulnerability and authenticity. The confidence he demonstrated in the boardroom felt miles away from this intimate setting, yet he knew he could find parallels. "Trust grows in layers," he continued, attempting an encouraging tone. "And it's built over time with honest communication and empathy. You can ask questions, but it's also important to listen. Like when you listen to me?" Lily pointed out, her face breaking into a soft smile. "Yes, exactly. Like that," he affirmed, his heart warming at her perception. It felt tangible, this delicate bridge between them. A wave of resolve surged within him. If he navigated this well, it would illuminate pathways of connection not just with Lily, but within himself as well. "You can always come to me, kiddo. If something feels off, tell me. I'm always here for you," he said, striving for reassuring firmness. Lily's response was a somber nod, and for a fleeting moment, David felt an impressive bond strengthen between them. Yet, shadows of his own doubts crept in. Could he hold genuine connections in his professional life while nurturing this newfound depth with Lily? Could he avoid the pitfalls that had defined his past relationships, including the fraught one with Isabel? Later that night, while the stars twinkled outside his window, David pondered strategies for both work and home. He pulled a clean notebook from his desk, determined to sketch out plans that could foster a supportive environment for Lily. Each portion of the page represented pieces of his life, a section marked work, another labeled family, each filled with fleeting thoughts about building trust and facilitating open dialogues. But as he wrote, the shadows returned, darker than before, reminding him of Isabel's icy stare during their last confrontation. Those were scars of failure he needed to face, the remnants of strained conversations that culminated in sealed lips and guarded hearts. Therein lay an uncomfortable truth. Could he balance the ruthlessness of his corporate ambition with the softness required to be a nurturing parent? Navigating these realms felt like walking through a minefield. In that introspective moment, a dangerous clarity struck him. The upcoming board meeting would be pivotal. Perhaps it was the moment to introduce a radical new initiative that reflected his commitment to ethical practices and long-term engagement and embodiment of the principles he aimed to instill in Lily. Yet with this resolve, a gnawing realization tugged at him. The corporate world was fraught with its own shadows, motivated by profit at the expense of authenticity. David closed the notebook tightly, the unyielding surface mirroring the tension inside him. With trust being his newfound foundation at home, could he use it as a weapon to dismantle the insecurities ingrained in his work life? As decision time loomed and the specters of both worlds danced in dissonance, one thought lingered: the essence of who he was stood at a crossroad. Would the real David show up when the time came to confront those darker aspects of his professional existence? Every fiber in him vibrated with intensity, urging him to confront the depths of this duality. How could he unveil that which remained hidden within himself and the perilous business realm he inhabited? As dawn broke, casting a gentle light across his bedroom, David's mind was already racing. He awoke stewing in a mixture of excitement and dread about the board meeting planned for that afternoon. The idea of proposing a new initiative that emphasized ethical practices was invigorating, yet the ghosts of his past failures loomed larger than ever. Confronting those specters meant risking vulnerability in a ruthless corporate arena. Even the notion of unveiling such a meaningful venture felt perilously naive, yet it also ignited a flicker of hope deep within him. He had set out the night before to prepare his presentation, scribbling down bullet points for strategies that aligned with his newfound understanding of trust and empathy. Each word resonated with the lessons learned from his conversation with Lily, a turning point illuminating aspects of himself he often buried under corporate ambitions. The tension of wearing multiple hats, being a father, a leader, an ethical advocate, invoked an ever-increasing urgency to act. In the shower, the steam clouded the mirror, but his reflection swirled more vividly. Who was he becoming as he carved out this dual path? He clenched his fists, challenging himself to push through the self-doubt. The time had come to face the seemingly insurmountable barriers forged by years of prioritizing ambition over authenticity. Over breakfast, the sight of Lily engrossed in a colorful book ignited a fierce resolve in him. Dismissing thoughts of how his colleagues might react, he focused instead on the impact this initiative could have not just on the company's bottom line, but on the moral fabric of their work environment. He needed to embody the trust he now sought to foster with Lily and echo it through the company culture. But concern washed over him again as he gathered his things. The thought of Isabel, with her piercing criticism and icy demeanor, filled the void left by his absent confidence. Had he learned enough to let go of her shadows? They had once tangled in an ugly dance, where her opinions dictated his actions. With gripping determination, he shook his head clear, unwilling to let past failures dictate future successes. He arrived at the office, bustling with energy, yet his heart raced at the thought of his colleagues' expressions as he entered the boardroom. They were accustomed to a particular type of David: ruthless, numbers-driven, cutthroat in a market where empathy was often viewed as weakness. But there was a different David rising, one ready to dismantle the prevailing mindset. As he took his seat, he surveyed the room. Anxiety fluttered in his stomach, yet that spark of purpose thrummed undeniably beneath. He launched into his proposal, reminding himself to draw on authenticity rather than rehearsed lines. The concepts flowed effortlessly. He was finally speaking from a place of genuine belief and intention. Trust wasn't just a construct he wanted to teach Lily. It would be the cornerstone of a new corporate ethos. The moment the presentation concluded, silence settled over the boardroom. Perplexed expressions wrestled with incredulity. David held his breath. He sensed a shift, fragile yet palpable. Just as he prepared to defend his vision, a voice chimed in: Keith, a longtime colleague known for his pragmatism rather than empathy. Are you serious? This isn't the time to reinvent the wheel, David. We'll lose our edge, he warned, crossing his arms, his brow knitted with disbelief. David's mind raced. Was he prepared for resistance, for the confrontation? In that moment, he felt the echoes of Lily's words reverberate through him. It was now or never. Sometimes, David gathered his courage. Honest connections can drive profits in ways numbers alone can't measure. Trust can become our edge. The tension shifted. As the debates ignited, David was caught off guard by a rush of realization. This was more than about defending a proposal. It was about asserting the very identity he hoped to build: a father who instilled values through his examples, a CEO who led with integrity, but deep down, uncertainty persisted. Would his advocacy be brushed aside as naive idealism? The weight of that prospect loomed as unrelenting as Isabel's presence. He swallowed hard. The outcome of this meeting would define not only his professional career but also the trust he needed to nurture at home. Would he dismantle the very barriers he used to keep business and authenticity apart? The conversation was heating up, and suddenly, he was at the center of a storm that challenged the essence of who he was. Would he emerge stronger and more unified, or would he crumble under the pressures of disbelief and resistance? Time would reveal the answer, but one truth was clear: the moment of truth arrived, and David was prepared to redefine the stakes of authenticity, both for himself and his daughter. David sat at the boardroom table, absorbing the gravity of the moment. Voices clashed like thunder, as his colleagues debated the merits of his ethical initiative. Every criticism felt like a dagger aimed at his tentative vision. Keith's skepticism bounced back and forth between the room's walls, echoing David's insecurities. The tension was a taut line. One misstep could snap it. "This isn't just about numbers, Keith," he interjected, his voice steadier than he felt. "It's about our legacy, about how we want to be viewed not just by our clients, but by our employees and families. I want my daughter to be proud of what I do." A flicker of vulnerability crossed his mind, but he swiftly anchored himself. This wasn't merely a business proposal, it was a declaration of who he was becoming that he anticipated the usual retorts. Isabel's unwavering pragmatism was always lurking just beneath the surface of any important discussion. True to form, she leaned forward, her icy stare locking onto his. "Sentimentality doesn't pay the bills, David. Your daughter won't be paying our salaries." The room bristled. While some shifted uncomfortably, others seemed to nod, swayed by her resolute stance. Yet, in that moment, inspiration struck. But what if we could be both profitable and ethical? What if trust became a measurable asset? He spoke with conviction, the sharp edge of his previous failures transforming into a point of strength. The concept of ethical leadership had not merely coalesced within him, it now exploded forth, fueled by a newfound resilience forged from personal revelation. "Look, I understand fear drives our decisions. But avoiding change because we're afraid to lose our edge is the real risk," he continued, feeling the shift in energy. He drew a deep breath, envisioning Lily's innocent belief that people fundamentally wanted to do good. "I know changes can feel unsafe, but that doesn't mean they're wrong." The room went quiet again, the weight of his words hanging palpably in the air. As he prepared for the inevitable counterarguments, an unexpected voice rang out: a junior associate named Felix, who rarely spoke up. "I think David makes a good point. People want to feel connected to their work. When we create a culture built on trust, that intrinsically motivate us all?" A few heads swiveled in Felix's direction, surprise mixed with dawning acknowledgement. David saw a crack form in the rigidity of their walls, a glimmer of common ground sparking amidst heated positions. Could he have ignited a dialogue? With this cautious momentum, he pressed on. "Imagine if we led with empathy and clarity. It's not just an initiative, it's a movement. An opportunity for us to be pioneers. At the end of the day, we talk about our employees being our greatest asset. Why not start treating them like one?" Speaking from his core, David strove for authenticity. Each word encompassed both his professional identity and his role as a father. Would they grasp this duality? But as moments stretched unbearably, and the board members shuffled their papers, he felt his heart pound against his ribcage. Keith's glare returned, this time sharper. "You're a good dad, David, but you can't afford to get caught up in feel-good strategies that don't yield results. You risk everything for untested ideals. Pain sliced through him, the memories of Isabel's strict practicality aggravated by the threat etched in Keith's words. What if he was simply a dreamer? How had he allowed the shadows of their judgment to tangle his resolve? But nestled within that fear was something taut and persistent: his daughter's unwavering belief in him. Perception doesn't matter as much in the long run, David said, clearer, more resilient. I'd rather risk everything for a chance to change how we view success. The air thickened, his pulse quickening at the weight of their scrutiny. Would they reject him again? As the discussion ricocheted around the table, David realized he wasn't just competing for a vote anymore. He was battling against the ghosts of his past beliefs and reforging his professional identity. His vision wasn't naive, it was necessary. The harsh truths he once embraced were fading, overshadowed by a desperate plea for authenticity in a callous world. Perhaps he didn't need his colleagues' approval to justify his journey. But even with a semblance of confidence, his mind flickered back to the lingering question: would they accept this new David, one who prioritized compassion over competitiveness? The debate raged on, but within him was a new fire. A revelation was brewing, one that challenged him to explore what true leadership demanded. As the clock ticked on, the room still divided, David realized a decision loomed on the horizon. Would he hold on to his vision fiercely enough to withstand the storm? And at what cost? The outcome of this meeting could very well redefine his path, shaping not only his career but also the ethical legacy he would leave for Lily. A sudden thought struck him. What if he took this discussion one step further? What was he truly prepared to risk for his principles? Perhaps the price of authenticity would reveal itself sooner than he expected. The discussion in the boardroom had reached a crescendo, each voice a note in a dissonant symphony that pushed against the limits of David's resolve. As the clock advanced past the hour mark, he felt the weight of his colleagues' eyes, assessing, judging, calculating. It dawned on him that he wasn't just defending a vision, he was challenging multiple layers of professional culture that had become entrenched over the years. This was no longer just about numbers or figures, it was about creating a new paradigm for leadership. What if we hold ourselves accountable? David ventured, feeling a hard knot form in his stomach, an impulse to shake off the impotence that had besmirched his spirit for years. What if we were to introduce a system where our efforts towards ethics are not just a side thought but integrated into our overall performance metrics? Surprise flickered across several faces, the idea seeming startling to those who had only ever measured success in revenue and quarterly reports. Keith's expression transformed from irritation to contemplation. David leaned into the moment, powered by the possibility of shifting the conversation from defensiveness to collaboration. I'm not suggesting we abandon our financial objectives, far from it, he clarified, noticing his hands shaking slightly as he gestured emphatically. What I propose is that we align our profitability with a mission to elevate every individual within this organization. When people feel valued and respected, their productivity, our bottom line, improves. It's a win-win. A murmur of acknowledgement rippled through the room. As David sensed a fraction of the tide beginning to turn, he glanced at Isabel. The skepticism in her eyes hadn't faded completely, but it seemed less fierce now, a crack, an opening to be explored. Against the instinctual push to retreat, he resisted the urge and pressed on. Remember when we invested in that community welfare program last year? Our profits soared afterward. People talk about ethical consumerism growing, but we can also lead that charge internally, he continued, his voice growing in strength. What we aim to build here should be a testament to our values, it should be ingrained in our very DNA. Minimizing his own sense of vulnerability gained momentum. He envisioned Lily's wide-eyed wonder: how would she see her father if he strived not just to be successful, but also to foster goodness? What kind of leader would she aspire to emulate if success was couched in empowerment, not merely profit? The room seemed to breathe with him, an undercurrent of potential began to swirl. This wasn't just a business meeting, it was a potential ideological shift. Each face around the table reflected collective uncertainty, but it wasn't hostility. It was the challenge of adapting, a threshold waiting to be crossed. And yet, David added, allowing a moment of silence to build. Isn't that what we owe ourselves and future generations? To strive for something that others will not? I want my daughter to understand that real leadership requires vulnerability and courage. With a deep breath, he reflected on the position he had found himself in, not just between colleagues with differing views but within a battle against his past self-aversion inclined to motility for security and tradition. The journey toward advocating for ethical practices could also forge a path deep into the recesses of his being, but amid the growing optimism, he felt a shadow flit through his mind. What if Keith or Isabel decided to dig deeper? What if they sought to undermine him or challenge his newfound philosophy? The potentiality of failure felt tangible, yet liberating. He marveled at the paradox, the realization that understanding who he was becoming would demand grappling with uncertainty. As the tension shifted, David wondered if there was yet more he could do. Building a bridge from ideals to reality involved risks he hadn't anticipated. How much weight could his colleagues handle? How much of himself could he reveal? Would the floodgates open, and would they embrace this renewed vision, or would the tides push him back, crashing against rigid mindsets like rocks against the shore? His heart raced at the graphic reality of bringing his daughter's beliefs into an unyielding world that often savaged ideas born in empathy. "Let us put this to a vote," Keith declared, a shift in his demeanor hinting at perception realignments. A single question echoed in David's mind as he braved both acceptance and potential rejection. What was truly at stake the moment they cast their votes? Would his leap of faith pay off, or would it mark the beginning of a more profound struggle? The stakes were very real, and the answer lay suspended just beyond reach, waiting to unfurl. David stood at the precipice of transformation, poised to redefine both his professional ethos and his personal legacy. After weeks of anxiety and internal conflict, he finally felt clarity wash over him. The board meeting had concluded, and while the votes were cast, it was the dialogue that left its mark, churning the narrative not just for the company but for himself and, most importantly, for Lily. As the room emptied, the applause still echoing in his ears, David took a moment to reflect. This wasn't just about winning the initiative, it was about embracing vulnerability, about standing firm in his newfound integrity and the authentic leadership he sought to embody. To accept the change he proposed was a monumental leap. It required acceptance of the discomfort that often accompanies growth. Weeks passed, and the team began to implement changes. It was a tumultuous time, agreement punctuated by moments of resistance, yet David thrived on the challenge. Each hesitation was transformed into a lesson, each conflict unveiling opportunities for dialogue and deeper understanding. He led with empathy, recognizing the fears that gripped his colleagues as they adjusted to a new paradigm. Simultaneously, David transformed his own parenting. He established a practice of open-ended conversations with Lily, inviting her perspective into discussions, regardless of the topic. Whether they were talking about school or friendships, he created space for her voice to resonate. They learned together, evolving side by side, an unbreakable bond fortified by genuine engagement. One evening, as they settled down to watch a movie together, Lily suddenly turned to him. "Daddy, I like talking to you. Can we keep doing it?" Her innocent question caught him entirely off guard. He smiled, warmth swelling in his chest as he understood the profound impact of revealing his authentic self not just as a CEO, but as her father. "Absolutely. It's important to be honest and to share what we feel," he replied, each word charged with fresh conviction. Her smile was a beacon, reminding him of why this path mattered so much, to create a legacy of trust and integrity. And the corporate landscape, the ripple effects of David's initiative began to unfold. Employees reported heightened morale, and productivity surged. Clients, too, began to take notice of the shift in corporate culture, praise flooding in for their newfound authenticity. David realized the power of weaving together ethical practice with operational success. This was the renaissance of his leadership. Then, one afternoon, as he reviewed feedback from their first ethical performance reports, an email popped into his inbox. It was from the board of directors, an invitation for him to speak at a regional summit on ethical leadership in tech. A spark of recognition ignited in him. This was his platform to advocate for the principles he so dearly valued. He accepted the invitation without hesitation. As he prepared for his keynote address, David reflected on his journey, the fears, the confrontations, and ultimately, the reclamation of his authentic self. This was not merely about him anymore, it was about the ripple effect he could create for Lily, for his colleagues, and for future generations entering the workforce. In that moment, he felt a swell of confidence, a solid grounding born from the culmination of weeks of growth. The day arrived, bright with potential. Standing in front of an audience of peers, David introduced his vision for ethical leadership. Voices rang out in support, challenges posed, but it didn't matter. Each question was met with clarity, each critique reframed into further dialogue. As he shared his personal narrative, he witnessed transformation unfolding in real time, a collective recognition that resonated far beyond the walls of the conference center. He closed his speech with a simple yet potent message: true leadership is not born of authority, it is forged through trust. As leaders, we owe it to ourselves and those who believe in us to nourish an environment that thrives on empathy, integrity, and courage. As applause reverberated, David stepped down, each clap echoing his achievement, a definitive point in his personal and professional odyssey. Standing amidst newfound collaborators and supporters, the sight of Lily's face flashed in his mind, her beaming pride emblazoned across the screen of his memory. In that haze of triumph, he recognized the profound truth: personal growth is always interwoven with interpersonal connection. By confronting his fears and choosing authenticity, David cemented a legacy of trust that would carry forward, illuminating the paths of many. This was the moment he had sought all along: a newfound confidence in his voice, a recognition of his competence, and a celebration of individual achievement that emboldened the foundation of his new identity. The road ahead glimmered with promise, but it was now defined not just by corporate goals, but by the unwavering commitment to honor the bright-eyed girl who had been his compass all along. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Your support really matters. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. I want to hear from you. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to show your support. True fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of backing the channel through these actions.